Okay, it's May 8th, right?
Right,
May 8th at 8 o'clock, and this is the interview with who's the field representative from the U.S. Department of Commerce regarding the census.
This is the American Community Survey to collect the current population and housing information. I have some questions to ask you. Did you receive our mailing?
I did not.
Census Bureau is conducting the survey to collect the current population and housing information and required by law to tell you that the survey is authorized by Title 13, Sections 141, 193, and 221 of the United States Code. The average interview is about 30 minutes. The survey is mandatory and your cooperation is really important. All the information you provide will remain completely confidential. What type of unit is this? Private residence?
It's a private residence.
Are you Hispanic, Spanish, or Latino?
I don't know.
Okay. Please look at, are you white? I'm going to read off a list of categories.
Yeah.
White, black, African American.
Hang on a minute. Let me just make a couple of statements. The rest of this, I reviewed the questions in this document.
Okay.
And to save us all a lot of time, I'll state up front that I believe that it's my constitutional right under Amendment 4,
Okay.
which prevents any unlawful seizure, which I consider this to be search and seizure by asking me personal questions, not to answer personal questions beyond what's constitutionally required under the census, which is how many people live there, what's your name, basic information, because the purpose of the census under the Constitution is to ascertain how many representatives a particular state is entitled to.
Okay.
So I have no problem answering those questions. However, anything that delves into personal information under Amendment 4 of the Constitution and under Amendment 9, which has been interpreted by the Supreme Court to grant a right of privacy to citizens, I won't answer most of the rest of these questions. So you can, I don't know if you're required to ask me. If so, you can ask, and I'll just simply say decline for each one that I decline to answer.
If I could clarify, this is not the decennial, and what you referred to would be information that would be pertinent to the decennial, which is by law that the United States government goes out and conducts a census of the population.
Okay.
This particular survey, the American Community Survey, which is an ongoing survey that has different styled questions that are really related to housing and population for the community.
Okay.
So it's more of an aggregate thing, not exactly pertaining to you. It's an address-based survey.
Okay.
It means that we would ask you living in the house, if you weren't living there, whoever was living in the unit would be the one that would receive the question. So we don't differentiate between you personally. It's address-based.
Okay. I read through the U.S. Code that you cited at the beginning of the interview, sections Title 13, Section 141, Section 193, and Section 221, and there was nothing in there. There was information there about the decennial census and the one that was recently implemented every 5 years, but there was nothing in there about any community survey. Okay, so I'm not sure how this governs what you're doing, but
it's for appropriating federal dollars.
Right.
Some of our questions will ask about what time you leave for work.
Right.
We don't care about when you leave for work or where you work or what you make. We want to know in the big picture of what the socioeconomic picture is.
Right.
We want to know how many people are on the highway, how many people are going down Route 412.
Right.
So it's not about you personally.
Okay, maybe I don't mean to cut you short, but I've spent some time on the internet today researching this, trying to understand why it's being done. I understand it's basically being done essentially to gather marketing information because, hear me out, the federal government is now in the business of doling out millions and millions of dollars for all kinds of programs to the states, to the local communities, to the school systems. I'll tell you, I philosophically disagree with that. I don't believe that's ever been the job of the federal government. Apparently more citizens believe that the federal government should take more and more control over all of our lives. However, and I disagree with that, but that's the way it's gone. However, I do not believe that just because the federal government is now doling out more and more tax money and, of course, collecting more and more of our tax money to do it, doesn't obligate me to provide information to the federal government that's in this questionnaire, which is essentially, as you state, how many people are on the road. Well, there's a real easy way to find that out. You set up sensors on the roads and count the number of cars that go by. I mean, private companies do this, states do this.
That's for state level,
Okay.
but if you're going to do that, and then you're going to go to the federal government to say, we need to have money to support our data, the federal government needs to
I
collaborate.
don't believe the state should go to the federal
Well,
government. If it's a state
I'll tell
road,
you what.
if it's a state road, the state should fund the road, and if that means they got to collect tolls to fund the road, fine. That's under our control. As members, as citizens of this state and citizens of this community, I can call up my local representative, I can go to local meetings and voice my pleasure or displeasure as to how how things are being run. I can volunteer my own input, okay? If somebody wants to ask me a bunch of questions that are on here, and they're willing to pay me for my time, because frankly, to answer these questions would require a considerable amount of time going back through records. If they want to ask me these questions, and I want to volunteer that information, and they want to compensate me for the time it's going to take to do that, that's a different story. But for the federal government to compel me to answer these questions, I think is unconstitutional. It violates my rights. And the Constitution calls for a census. I know you said this isn't a census, this is something else. As far as giving information that's required by the Constitution for the census, I have no problem with that. Anything else, I won't answer.
One of the things, I'll tell you what's interesting about this is this helps areas, for instance, for senior citizen centers.
Mm-hmm.
This helps...
Why is the federal government in the business of senior citizen centers?
They're not, but let's face it, a good democracy makes decisions based on good information. They need to be informed.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, they can't make any decisions.
There are ways to get information without compelling people to do it. You could make it voluntary and make it very attractive to do sampling and surveys. Companies do this all the time, and yet, private companies do marketing surveys.
We don't want to go private.